All right. Well, Trump has sent some missiles into Yemen, targeting Houthi bases and general Houthi sites. Some civilians are dead, not way too many, and it's hard for me to know exactly how many have died as a result of these strikes that are still ongoing. They started this weekend, and to my knowledge, they're still going today, which is Monday. I'm hearing a lot of conflicting reports, but this was in retaliation for Houthi attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. And, they don't just attack Israeli linked ships, they've been attacking US linked ships, US ships, British ships, even Liberian ships, and I don't, to my knowledge, I don't think there's any justification for why the Houthis could be attacking Liberia. They've been attacking. There's been some kind of like Caribbean owned ships as well that have been fired upon. To my knowledge, just about every ship that's been fired upon, the U.S. has shot it down, or in the case of Houthis trying to uh, board a ship, we have intervened and killed them. In most instances, however, earlier on, I think it was last year, so in 2024, I'm thinking in November, the Houthis, it was rather November or December, but the Houthis captured this British ship. I think it's called the Galaxy or something, and they've taken 25 hostages, I think, that were manning the ship, and to my knowledge, they're still in captivity. So, these guys are, they attack civilians. They're definitely terrorists in the purest sense of the word. I mean, they attack civilians. They don't attack legitimate military targets. I say all that because I don't want it to sound like I'm sympathetic to their cause, because they are bad. But I also recognize that were it not for us being involved, uh, or well, us supporting Israel and allowing Israel to bombard Gaza and starve the population and whatnot, you know, had we not facilitated that, this wouldn't be happening in the first place. And the Houthis are so mobile that our strikes, in retaliation to whatever they do, don't seem to be that effective because as soon as we know where they are, they've already cleared out. So it seems like we might want to be a little more diplomatic with them. But what do you think? Why I've been monopolizing a little.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear to me that these are the bad guys. I mean, the Houthis, I mean, like you said, they're straight up terrorists, you know. There is no hiding that. They are not the good guys. But that doesn't mean that necessarily that, that we need to just bomb them to smithereens, right? Like, I don't think escalation here might be the best tactic. I mean, so the whole point of the bombardment and the airstrikes is because they're trying to penetrate deep underground where they have all these these weapons depots and they have all these like manufacturing centers that's where they make all their weapons, and they're deep underground. Like these are like legitimate like armored tunnels down below. And they're saying that it may take weeks of bombardment to airstrike and bombard this shit, you know? Um
Oh yeah.
and that
Oh
may not
yeah.
even be enough. Like we could be bombarding these people for 6 weeks, and then we get to the end and we're like, there wasn't even like weapons depot there. Like we don't have a lot of good intelligence here. So I'm not. I don't see this as anything other than a way to deter Iran from aggression. That's how I see this. This is just a baby fight, like a proxy war. This is a show of force to Iran, so that way they don't, get too frisky right now, in my opinion. Now that's not
Uh,
to say that we shouldn't. Like I'm all for like if the Houthis want to go to war, like we can bomb the hell out of them. I don't view them as good guys. They're definitely terrorists and they've committed acts of terror. So it doesn't really bother me that like when they do something out of line, bomb them. But you're also right, in the sense that like when that ceasefire was going on, they didn't strike a single U.S. ship or single British ship, right? They pretty much stopped all escalation. And then whenever Israel broke the ceasefire, they decided to start doing things again. So
oh yeah, you're right. You're right. And like you said, with the, trying to basically act, doing these to deter Iran, I think, I think that, yeah, that's definitely part of it. I also think, you know, and I'll let me know what you think of this afterwards. I'll ask a question afterward, but I'm kind of thinking Trump almost wants to go to war with Iran, and this is how he finally gets Iran to, cross a tripwire or something and finally give us the pretext to, I don't know, like bomb their oil fields or bomb their nuclear facilities. Um, because there's that tweet you showed me earlier today that Trump, or I should say the truth that Trump truthed out, where he said any further attacks by the Houthis would be considered attacks by Iran, basically. And even though the Houthis, while they are supported by Iran, they've received arms and training and, special weaponry from Iran. They're not a proxy of Iran like Hezbollah is, to the same extent Hezbollah is, where they're more taking orders. So this is definitely really fraught territory. I mean, any at any point, in the coming days, the Houthis could they could send some missiles to one of our ships, and God forbid they actually land. They haven't had success in that arena thus far, but God forbid one of our ships gets sunk or takes major damage. I mean, what happens then? Are we bombing Iran? I don't know. So my question to you is: Do you, a is Trump bluffing, or and B, do you think this is kind of the same question, but do you think Trump wants war with Iran? Despite his, I know he's all about maximum pressure. That's his mo, maximum pressure. And he styles himself as the anti-war candidate, but I don't think that's a statement you would make if you were truly the anti-war candidate. So, what do you think? Do you think Trump wants us to get into a war with Iran?
I do not. I think in a world where Trump got everything he wanted, we would not go to war with Iran. But I also know that Trump doesn't want to look weak. And as long as they can spin this to where he looks weak, like he will go to war with Iran. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying that I don't think that's what he wants. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of, I mean, look at who surrounded himself with, right? They're all war hawks that want to go to war with Iran. Like, I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Oh
Benjamin
yeah.
Netanyahu said openly in the public that he wants a joint operation to take out oil fields and nuclear facilities, right? And Trump is having to like walk that back. You know what I mean? If he wanted war, now look, maybe you're right, and he just needs a justification for it, and this is the justification. But I really doubt it. Now, I'm not saying, like I said, I think this is leading us towards a war. I just don't think it's intentional. I just think he's stupid.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I kind of agree. I think I agree. I don't know that he himself wants the war. However, he, like you said, he makes these just incredibly provocative statements, and he does these things that maybe maximum pressure and a different scenario would, and who knows, time will tell. Maybe it'll work in this scenario, but we are really playing with fire here. I mean, like I said, all the Houthis have to do is, according to his statement, all the Houthis have to do is attack us and land a hit, and before we know it, we'll be we'll be striking inside Iran. That, I mean, that's what I assume. I assume that that's what Trump means. So it's very scary. In war with Iran, while I do think, I know that if we were to actually do it, we would probably win handily. Well,
For
I
sure.
say that. I mean, we could certainly level the place. I don't
You
know if
know,
it would turn in. Oh, go on.
and I just have to add this. I think it's really funny because, Trump, he wants a nuclear deal with Iran, right? Which is ironic, right? Because
Yeah.
he obviously ended the previous deal after we gave them all the money, which is ridiculous. It's in and of itself. But he says he wants a new deal. And whether that's genuine or not, I don't know. But let's assume it is genuine. So Trump wants a nuclear deal with Iran. Do you notice how he's talking tough with Iran? You notice how he's talking like, the tough guy and acting like a bully and like trying to force them to capitulate, right?
Hmm.
And then compare that with how he talks about Putin, right? Where he's like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to talk to this guy like, big tough guy, and then go, hey, Vladimir, how he does that whole spiel, right? And then at the same time when he's talking about Iran, he's sitting there going like, hey, from this point forward, any Houthi attack will be treated like an attack ordered by Iranian leadership. And
That's a really good point. Like,
I don't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, sorry, I was just going to ask you, why do you think that is? Because, I mean, like you were saying, like, he just plays with kid gloves with Putin. I mean, he backed Putin up in the UN General Assembly with, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And
Well, part of it is I think that like him and Putin like actually seem to like get along. Like they've been in rooms together, they've been on phone calls together, and I think Putin knows how to manipulate him in a different way than most other world leaders, in a way that doesn't require capitulation. For the most part, if you're gonna get it, which Putin's not a dumb guy. Like our audience shouldn't be fooled. Like he's pretty brutal and he's a little more authoritarian than I'm comfortable with, but he's not stupid. Like even when like our allies come over here, there's some form of humiliation, some form of capitulation, some form of like paying a tithe, right? But when
oh,
Putin
yeah.
Putin doesn't seem to have any of that, and I think it's because he knows exactly how to manipulate. Um, and Iran just doesn't have those in the cards, in my opinion. There's just too much working around that because the people around Trump are not going to let him trust Iran, and then the Israel lobby is definitely not going to let him trust Iran. So that would be my guess as to why there's like a different tone shift. And I think that Trump, at the end of the day, he looks at Iran and he's like, "There's no way we can be allies," and he looks at Russia and he says, "Well, maybe in an ideal world, right?" You know?
Yeah, yeah, maybe he sees like a a lane there that he can pivot to. Yeah, maybe it's like a familiarity thing. To me, I almost feel like it probably would be easier to get along with Putin than Ayatollah Khamenei.
Right.
I don't know. Khamenei doesn't seem as jovial as
But
far as dictators go.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, he seems more serious. Not the kind of dictator I'd like to
Now,
go out to lunch with.
right, no kidding, right? But in terms of war, potential war with Iran, because that's what this could escalate to. I want the audience to be very clear. Like it is, we are a stone throw away from being responsible for an escalation into a full-scale Middle Eastern conflict, which Trump promised not to do, but we're playing with that line. Um, would you just explain your thoughts on a potential Middle Eastern war or a joint operation with Israel against Iran, and why that's like completely, I mean, fucking crazy, you know? Like,
Well, I mean, I totally oppose it. Just number one, it's just totally not in our interest. And it would be obvious to the whole world that it would all be at the behest of Israel. If were it not for Israel, we certainly wouldn't be in this predicament. And were it not for Israel, I'm sure we'd still be buddy buddy with the Saudis. But instead of the Abraham Accords, which Kushner brokered in Trump's first term, what we would be doing is trying to institute peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That would be the Abraham Accords. If Israel were not a factor. So it all comes back to Israel. Like, were it not for them, we could probably get peace in the Middle East. I really think so. But we're just so captured. And another thing, I I I think if we were to go to war with Iran, just like the war in Iraq, it cost us trillions. We lost standing. Global standing over it. I would imagine we would lose global standing, a lot of global standing, if we went into war with Iran. Uh, People are in that region are just going to hate us more. Uh, I just don't see, all for what? What would we gain for it? Uh, they're not an exceptionally resource rich nation, so even if we occupied it, like I mean, they do have oil, but compared to like the Saudis, it's not quite as much. And
right. Well, the biggest thing from them too is they control the Strait of Hormuz, which that's where, like, that's the obviously the strait where all the oil, even from the Sauds, comes from. So, like, it's not just that they have oil; they control like I don't even know. It's an ungodly percentage of like the world's oil shipping lanes is completely controlled by Iran. You know,
that is a
so.
good point. That is a good
Um,
point.
and that's not to say that it's a bad thing that they own it because they haven't been stupid enough to blow up an oil tanker yet. But I will say that like any disruption, so like if we were to go to war, you don't think that they would use that? Like you don't think they'd start blowing up tankers?
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'm sure they would.
which
I mean,
I'm
gas
sure that
prices.
people are aware of, like a war between Iran, whether or not Saudi Arabia gets involved directly, I doubt it if they would. Um, but I mean, you would see the price of gas skyrocket because you're sectioning off both Russia and Iran, and then potentially by like indirect, like like an indirect level of action, Saudi Arabia would be able to produce less oil. You know what I mean? So like gas would
Oh
just
yeah.
by necessity, you know, skyrocket. And this is all like super hypothetical, and I don't like to talk super big hypotheticals other than like, I would just oppose war with Iran. It's a horrible idea. It's very clear that it doesn't help us out in any way, you know. And I think this would be one of the defining moments of foreign policy, not just for like Trump's presidency, but for the next, 10, 15 years.
Oh yeah, there's no telling how long we'd be in there. Uh, Hopefully not long, but if it happens, which and I really hope it doesn't, but it just feels more and more likely every day. The people, like you said, the people around Trump, they want it, and there's, maybe, and once once that red line is crossed, even if Trump has, good instincts or something, his instincts aren't going to save him from this. Oh my gosh, it would be a nightmare. And, there's stuff happening in Russia. If there's something that's happening in Iran as well, I mean, can you imagine if China takes that opportunity to go for Taiwan? We'd be too stretched thin. I mean,
Right. And what message does this say? I mean, Trump claims that he's trying to denuclearize parts of the world. And he's trying to tell a bunch of countries, like Vietnam, for example, or Australia, or South Africa, or Egypt, like, hey, don't get a nuclear weapon. Don't nuclearize. You don't need to do that. But then, like, at the end of the day, the only thing that even makes this war possible is the fact that Iran is not a nuclear superpower. If they had nukes, even if it was 15, we wouldn't be going to war. War would not even be on the table.
oh yeah.
Um, and I'm not even arguing that like the world should be a nuclear world. I'm just saying that we, the United States, shouldn't be making it a habit of bullying non-nuclear countries just for the sake of doing it. Like I think it's a uniquely bad idea because it undermines our entire foreign policy agenda, which has been, hey, nobody should really have nukes besides us. Like we're going to be the benevolent watchdogs, right? Us in the West, right? And how's that working out, right? And it's not because of the West. It's not because our allies are out there bullying fucking people, right? It's because the United States is invading countries who will sell them oil at a good price once they install a new democracy. Like, like what? I don't know, and I think the American people will see through this. Um, but who knows? In the moment, it's hard to say what the American people will do.
Oh yeah. Man, I really going back to something you said about the nukes. I really hope that uh they do not try to develop a nuclear weapon because I can just feel it. If they really go for it, I feel like we're gonna just totally destroy their nuclear facilities. And then I've heard, I don't know the level of fallout, but I mean, imagine the humanitarian crisis when all these nuclear facilities are just destroyed, and then all these refugees will have to. There'll be another refugee crisis like we saw in the
Oh, but
twin.
we don't care. We don't care because those refugees are gonna go to Europe, right? They aren't gonna come here. No, we don't care as long as they don't come here. You know what I mean? Like, and this is just and listen, like the Iranian people, like I don't have a problem with the people. I have a problem with their government. It's a theocratic government. It's not good. But the people are incredibly like first of all, they're young, they're pretty well educated. Like I think if the American people, like if you just spent 2 weeks over there, you would say that war with Iran is a non-starter. Like these people are like I don't know, like they're kind of like we've been betting on a revolution over there because their government is so detached from their populace. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah, and we used to be really on really great terms with them back when the Shah was around. I
Right.
mean, I know he received a lot of support from our government, so that's part of it. But, you know, I mean, these are people that, theoretically, like you said, we could get along with quite well. And in fact, a lot of people, they think of Iranians, they think of like, Persians are quite different than Arabs actually. Persians are they look pretty white, they look kind of like us. So I think people would be surprised uh
Yeah, they got
how
that olive
similar.
skin tone, almost like northern
Yeah,
Egyptians, you know?
yeah. You would probably think that they're probably akin to like a swarthier Greek perhaps. But yeah,
Sure.
they're like, relatively light tone, dark, very dark hair, but
Yeah. And I don't know, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like why? And I understand that we have to protect global shipping lanes. Like that's a true like national security, like globalization like measure that you have to take. But it's the rhetoric that comes along with it, and it's like the implied action that will be followed. You know what I mean? Like we're going above and beyond just deterrence here. We're trying to like spread the seeds that will eventually lead to a war, you know?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. It very scary, and I'm glad you tied it back to that to the Houthis because it's like, unlike with Iran, which you're not I'm not a fan of their government either. It's not something I would want to live under, but at
Right.
least Iran has displayed sensibility. I mean, they have acted partly because they're afraid of us, but partly also because they're wise. They've acted with a lot of restraint in this ever since October 7th. They've endured a lot. I mean, I this is going to be conspiratorial, but I believe that Israel likely had a hand in assassinating their president in that helicopter ride from Azerbaijan. I mean, Israel has assassinated and struck uh, many locations and people within Iran ever since October 7th broke out. So Iran has demonstrated incredible restraint, and up until now, they've shown incredible willingness to come to the table. It's just the fact that our government won't. So as far as the government goes, I actually feel a little bit of sympathy for the government of Iran as well as the people. But like you said, though, with the Houthis, there's just nothing redeemable about that faction. I mean, they have slaves, they sex slaves, or so I hear, and I do believe that. I don't think it's just our propaganda. Uh,
Yeah, these
you
are
know,
not the good guys. Not the good guys.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and they enforce a pretty strict version of Shia Islam on the population. Women have to always be covered head to toe. They have to wear like the burqa. That's not a society that I would want to live in or would want anyone I liked to live in.
Well, I'm not much of a fan of theocracy at all, like for really any religion. So, I just oppose it altogether. So, I mean, pretty easy call for me. I mean, it just I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me why anyone because there are people that exist. Don't make any mistake about it. There are people that exist that will defend Houthis as like anti-colonialist freedom fighters, and I'm like, you guys are beyond redeemably stupid. You know, like
Yeah, just because they're against the, people you don't like. Look, I don't like
exactly
Israel either, but it doesn't mean that Houthis are anyone to root for. I mean, you got these people like okay, these idiots like Hassan.
Piker,
Yes, yes, that guy, the nephew of Cenk
Shank,
Uyghur, yeah, or Uyghur.
Uger.
Uh, yeah, he got on like a Zoom call with like there was that Houthi pirate that kind of went viral because he was handsome, and like Hassan was basically just licking his throat the entire time. Just oh my gosh, so stupid. But you know that's the world we live in.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I've never been I don't get like the whole third worldist like thing, like just wanting to. I don't know. There's definitely it's definitely pronounced like in the left, but it's also like
Sure.
there's people like Jackson Hinkle, idiots like that. Who'll be like, the Houthis are going to win against you, America. It's like, dude, whose side are you on?
Right. Yeah. Got, I used to think that Jackson Hinkle was a bot on Twitter. I didn't think he was a real person. I'd never heard of this person before, and I just saw his content, and I was like, "This is unbelievable! It's shockingly uninformed.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's unbelievable."
Oh,
And
and he has to be a Russian asset, right?
oh
Like,
yeah, 100%. Like there's no doubt. Like if he's not registered under FARA explicitly, then he's getting some sort of like Tim Pool or Benny Johnson deal where he just doesn't know he's a Russian asset, you know?
oh yeah, he might be stupid enough not to know.
Yeah. Well,
And he had that Russian girlfriend for a while. I think they've since broke up, but that's suspicious.
yeah, red flags all around. All right, and covering our second topic for today, Trump's immigration plan has obviously struggled to meet their numbers. And I will go into that, but they're set to do even less than the Biden administration. So this, which is actually pretty impressive. And this is due to a lot of things. One is the lack of manpower. One is the lack of space for processing. Two is that three is that even when they do get the processing space, like in Guantanamo or foreign countries, they don't have enough immigration judges to actually process the number of detainees that they have. So there's a lot of problems here. So the Trump administration had a solution to this. The solution was to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which for those of you at home who may be going through, some sort of middle school history class or some college course, look up the Alien and Sedition Acts of the 1790s. This will give you a pretty rough estimate of what this is. But specifically, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 says that basically whenever there's a war declared or there's an invasion, perpetrated by a nation, then the president can proclaim it publicly, and pretty much all non-citizens, as long as they're 14 years or older, can be apprehended and removed. And there's really nothing any other branch of government can do to stop this. I mean, it's a wartime power. It's only been invoked 3 times in the entire history of the U.S. None of them are good. The War of 1812, World War I with German, Austrian, and Italians. And then, World War II, obviously, the Japanese internment camps, which were unbelievably harsh and cruel and not good. So, President Trump is trying to use a notoriously bad wartime power that has only ever been used for the darkest parts of American history. And he's using this to upscale his immigration deportation plan because it allows him to basically circumvent due process, right?
Oh yeah.
So, um, and the story doesn't end here. So, and Darren, I'll get your viewpoint here in just a second. But
Oh, you're fine.
so a judge blocks this, right? A judge says, "Hey, you can't. No, this is not going to work. This is not allowed." Um, so Trump was trying to deport some Venezuelan migrants, and about 250, a little bit less. And a judge said, "Nope, you can't do this under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Can't be done." Fly them back. They're in the middle of the air. They're going to El Salvador to be in a prison there because the Venezuelan government won't take them. And the Trump administration basically tells them, like, go kick rocks, Mr. Judge. Like, this is not up for judicial review. Like, you can't stop us. So they're supposed to have a hearing later on this week to determine whether or not that's even allowed, and we're going to be going from there. But just really quick, Darren, I just am curious. What are your thoughts on this plan to accelerate the deportations?
Well, like you said, Trump has really been struggling to deport people, and to bolster the point, if he keeps at this rate, he'll have deported less people than Biden deported and less people than Obama deported. Now, far less people are coming in right now. The border is incredible, one of the most secure it's been, and oh, I don't know how long Trump will say in all of history, but I can't imagine that that is correct. So I'll say in at least contemporary history, it's probably the most secure we've had. With that being said, though, just because the inflow has uh, decreased substantially, the outflow uh, has not. So Trump is wanting to expedite things, as he should, and I support him trying to expedite these things. Uh, you know, it's one of those things. I'm for it. Basically, I'm for what he's doing. In a perfect world, we could have due process, and we could quibble about the, like human rights and all that crap. But
Yeah, just
I,
just human rights. They're
oh
just
yeah,
human rights.
oh yeah,
That the hell's wrong with you? The hell's wrong with you?
yeah.
Not the pearl clutch, but
But yeah, I mean, it's like this is the problem, kind of inherent in the matter. Like 10 million came in under Biden, and we have no idea who they are. So even the good ones, most of which are, most of the ones who came in, great people. They came for a better life, yada, yada. They wanted to escape the, impoverishment or repression in Venezuela. And, honestly, I kind of blame that on Trump. I won't go in, I won't digress that far right now. Uh, but all that being said, 10 million have came in, a lot of them Venezuelans. We have no idea who they are. And so the Trump admin is saying, oh, well, these 230 people, I think, roughly, that they sent on a plane over to El Salvador, these are all Tren de Aragua, gangsters. And, it's totally justified for us to use this act and forgo due
really.
process. Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's his argument, and I basically agree. I mean, I
Now,
I imagine they're up to no good.
now, I do have to ask, and I don't mean to cut you off, but when you say that you agree, do you mean that you agree in the sense that like this is the most effective way to do it, or do you agree in the sense that like according to the letter and spirit of the act, right, that this qualifies?
Oh, oh, oh. Well, here, I think things need to be made more efficient, but from how I see the law, I'm not sure that these qualify. I'm not sure that this is legal or be upheld in court. I mean, the Supreme Court has acknowledged since Japanese internment that that was wrong. Now, the deal with Japanese internment was a little different. Those Japanese people were U.S. citizens, so this is slightly different. But again, we're not at war. That's just kind of something Trump said. So, in my opinion, if I'm being honest, I don't think this probably qualifies, but I'm willing to bend the law to achieve my own ends. I'm willing to I'm okay with if he wants to you know,
Right. Well, I mean, he can't just circumvent the third branch of government for no reason. So you're saying like this one is just justifiable enough, even if it's not exactly what the law's for. You're saying that this is just an effective way to do what is the most effective, right?
yeah, I mean, we're in such an extreme situation that I think it's justified to take extreme measures that might not otherwise, qualify us to do it. I mean, if only like 200,000 people came in under Biden's presidency, it would seem a bit extreme. But, when you're dealing with 10 million, to me, it seems justified to say, okay, we're just going to do whatever we need to get you out of here. And people make all these, they'll quibble about, oh, it's not humane. It's like it looks pretty humane to me. I mean, these people aren't being shot. It's not like we're
Well,
killing these people.
I mean, let's be very clear. Like, they're not going to Mexico or somewhere else in Central and South America. Like, they're going to El Salvador. And I'm sure you've seen that the reports from that prison that they're going to is that, like, these people will very likely go under, like, sexual assault. They will very likely physical assault. Uh, you know, I mean, I can't imagine that you would see what they would go through. And they haven't even been convicted necessarily of a crime. I mean, to go through that with a lack of due process to me is hard to justify, especially like if you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish, there's a way to do it, and you just have to go through Congress, and the Democrats, they're probably going to support you right now, like at the end of the day.
Well, you say that.
Ask
I
for
don't
more
know.
manpower, ask for more funding for detention centers, ask for more immigration judges. Like and Trump will fill them. Trump will fill them tomorrow. Like, but I to invoke this is a wartime power, and there's not a single time that this has been invoked where it's like, yeah, that was a good idea. Yeah, that turned out well for us,
Oh yeah, I mean, in the past, that I mean,
And a
you
judge
know,
told him no. That's the other part we're not. That's the other
oh
part we're
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Like a judge told him you can't do this, and they're doing it anyway. You don't see any problem with this?
But I think it's kind of cool that he's just ignoring the judge. Honestly,
Really?
I mean, I think it's cool because I mean, screw the judge. I mean, yeah, but me, I'm more okay with authoritarian rule. I don't think what is this guy, like some district court judge? I mean, he the idea that he can put restraints on the president just seems so unserious to me. It's like, what, are we a real country or are we not? Can the president do what he needs to, please? So, I'm
I
okay with I'm
can't. I super can't buy that. There's no way. I mean, at the end of the day, you're telling me that like when Biden wants to get rid of student debt, like sorry, that
I
can't be
wish he
done.
would have.
That
I
can't
wish
be
he
done with
would have.
executive
He'd make my
order.
life a whole lot easier. He would make my life a whole lot easier
It's not
if
even
he would.
about that for me. It's not even about that for me. It's just the fact that like listen, like at the end of the day, like if courts are telling us that like no, like the president has to go through Congress, president has to go through Congress, president has to go through Congress. Uh, I mean, you're basically arguing for like a more like aristocratic, like or not autocratic. Sorry, autocratic society. And at the end of the day, we're a democracy, dude, with checks and balances, right? You got to honor the checks and the balances. That's just the way it works.
Well, I'm okay with moving towards autocracy or aristocracy. Like you said with the student loans, I kind of wish Biden would have had the balls to just totally defy the Supreme Court and just somehow, uh, provide this student debt relief anyway. I would have loved that.
Look,
And
they're. Oh, go ahead.
oh well, and one more thing, some of the best things Biden did were, probably in my opinion, were, you could probably call them illegal, but like when he blew up Nord Stream 2, that was cool. That was like,
Allegedly. My God, would you
oh,
throw an
okay, okay,
allegedly
yeah,
out there?
yeah, okay,
Like,
allegedly,
are you trying to get us killed, Darren? Jesus. What the hell is wrong
yeah,
with
we all
you?
know he did. We all know, and he was cool
Of
for it.
course. Of
He was
course.
cool for it.
Yeah,
So,
some poor Delta Force agent was out there, blew it up, you know. Um,
and Biden ordered in between licks of his chocolate chip ice cream cone.
but listen, dude, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you can't sit here and tell me that like when Democrats want to do anything, then it takes 60 votes in the Senate. Sorry, that's the only way this government works. But then like Republicans can smash everything apart and do whatever they want, and they have the good old like who's going to stop me strategy. So like as far as I'm concerned, like these checks and balances only work if the person in the executive branch will honor them, because the Supreme Court's going to stop them with what army, you know?
Oh
And
yeah,
Democrats,
exactly.
like, sure, Biden said that the eviction moratorium was unconstitutional, and he said, "Yeah, I'm just trying to buy people more time." But then imagine a world where he does the eviction moratorium, the Supreme Court says, can't do that. Congress didn't give you approval, and he said, "I'm going to do it anyway." Do you have any idea the crackdown and the instability that would happen in our government if that happened? Like, our government is held together by these checks and balances. You know what I mean? And I understand it might benefit you. It might benefit you right now, Darren. And I'm not even sure to what degree it's going to benefit you, but
Well,
it's
you
not
make a
worth it.
fair point. I mean, it's not like it's not like the number that are being deported is like in the multi thousands or anything. I mean, the
Well,
number is in
there's
the
not that
few low
many.
hundreds.
This is the
So,
this is the part that I think you've got to grapple with, and not just you, but I think like the right that wants deportations. There's not that many immigrants that are like literal criminals, like gang member, like violent offenders. There's just not. And like most people would say that, yeah, of course, like deport those people, deport the violent offenders, if they've assaulted a person, right? That makes total sense to a lot of Americans. But I think that like the part where you're going for is that like and I shouldn't put words in your mouth. So would you say that like if anyone comes over illegally, because out of that 10 million, let's say at least 9,500,000 of them haven't committed any crimes, right? I mean, are you going to say that we should deport all those people, even though they're law-abiding contributors to our society?
one of the 10 million that came in under Biden, I would find it reasonable to deport all of them. Yeah. I mean, it's not feasible. We're not going
Sure,
to.
right. Logistics aside, I'm just trying to get like a maybe like a philosophical understanding of you here.
If I could snap my fingers and they would magically reappear in Guatemala, Honduras, Venezuela, yeah, I would.
Yeah, and see, that's the part I don't understand. Like these people haven't done anything wrong. You know what I
No,
mean?
they haven't. They haven't. They're just a strain. In fact, they're probably great people. I mean, who doesn't love Latin Americans? I mean,
Yeah,
we're honestly really lucky because if we were like bordering some, if we were accepting like, if the roles
like
were
Syria.
reversed, yeah, like Syrians, can you imagine, or Algerians?
Dear God, Darren.
Oh yeah, it
Um,
would be terrible. I mean, we are really lucky to be getting these Central and South Americans.
dude, we got
Uh,
the best cooks on the planet, the hardest workers on the planet. Like, I don't know what to tell you, Darren. Like,
oh yeah, I mean,
what's
yeah,
what's the con, Darren? Like, help me understand this.
well, there's strain on resources is all. It's just a matter of fact. It goes back to, uh, you know, yeah, it goes back to the national debt. It goes back to, well, like the strain on services. Each one of these migrants is going to, their kid has to be housed, schooled, fed. Whenever they go to the doctor, uh, they go to the emergency room, they don't have health insurance. So, that has second order effects, and it drives up, down the line. That's basically going to drive up premiums for the people who do pay health insurance because they're having to, pay.
Subsidize effectively.
Yeah, they're subsidizing it. So, I mean, there's just a whole order of second order effects why I'm, obviously just against them being here. Now, I mean, I'll be the first to say I'm not like one of these, Trump will say, "Oh, we don't know where they're coming from. They're coming from mental health asylums. They're coming from prisons. They're all
Well,
MS."
you've gotta do
Um,
some sort of propaganda to sell this to the base. Like the base isn't gonna like you rationalized that pretty well, I thought. But the base is not gonna agree with like what you said. Like if you tell these people that they're just their neighbor, Jose, right? Then they're not gonna be for deportations. They're just not, you know?
oh yeah, I mean,
Like Trump has to propagandize, and I'm not using propaganda in like a negative term. I mean just like he has to influence decision making, you know.
oh yeah, well, yeah. From that lens, I totally get that. I mean, he does have to sell it because I imagine so. Right now, I think we have a majority of Americans support mass deportations, just because there have been so many. But if the media were to, if it were to really go into effect, and we saw like, kids and moms getting loaded into vans, and the media was blasting it 24/7, support would probably plummet pretty quickly. So I'm totally aware of like, all of that. It's just a matter similar to other things like, my thoughts on entitlements. It's like it's going to be a hard thing, but it kind of has to be done, unfortunately.
I just I don't know. I couldn't disagree more. I think this is a uniquely bad idea, and I'm not even against deportations in general. Like if these members or these Venezuelans are part of that gang, then I'm all for, kicking them out. But like at the end of the day, like immigrants do have some level of rights, and they're not quite the rights as you and I, because you and I are citizens. But at the end of the day, like you have to give them some form of due process, and that's not my opinion, right? That's the law. You know what I mean? Like that's not something that like some liberal Marxist is saying on the podcast. Like that's what the law is. The law is you get caught, you get detained, you get processed, and then you go before a judge. You make your case, they make your case, and then the judge orders the deportation, and you get kicked out. That's the way it's worked. That's the way it always. And the only problem with that system is that it takes forever because we have a limit on the immigration judges, and we don't have enough. And we don't have enough detention centers um, to
Oh
do
yeah,
what.
we have very few beds to house these people. It's
But well, they're already maxed out. I mean, that's why
Oh
this
yeah,
started to
yeah.
begin with. They're already beyond capacity. But I mean, even more than all that, forget the manpower, forget all that. There's no political will. Republicans know, like you said, once CNN goes in there, once the New York Times gets in there, and they show you what's in these detention centers, they show you what's in these Venezuela or not Venezuela, El Salvadorian jails where these migrants are being held. Then when they get down to Guantanamo Bay and they show you what goes on, I mean, they had to exit Guantanamo Bay already for human rights abuses. Like it, the American people will not stand for this. When you show a suburban mom drinking wine, a video of an 8-year old girl being stripped from her mother, right? I mean, that to them is going to be viewed as a bigger crime than that mom hopping across the border and having an anchor baby. That's just the way I think that the Republican Party is very aware of that. And so they're trying to get around that by just kicking them out as fast as possible, you know?
Yeah, like I mean, agreed. There's just when people are exposed to the reality of it, there's just not going to be a lot of support for it. But, my point stands. I think it is in the interest of the American people for it to be done. And I am America first. So that's just
Interesting.
kind of my thought on it. But uh, is there any more to say on it? Uh,
I mean, I've said everything I want to cover, but I'll give you the final word, or if you have any questions, then go for it, kid.
I've really said all I want to say on it. You want to shoot over to that CR, the Schumer
Sure,
thing?
sure. So if the audience isn't aware, the Senate passed this week the House bill that is the budget continuing resolution, or also called CR. And basically, what it is that to avoid a government shutdown, they decided that they were going to continue the funds of the previous budget with some slight altercations, and we'll get into that for a second. But basically, here's what happened. So the House passed it with no Democratic support, and then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate can't use they can't use budget reconciliation to override the filibuster. So you have to have 60 votes. And so the Democrats held. I mean, to just be completely honest, this is the most leverage they're going to have until the midterms. This is the only leverage that they had, and their choice was simple. You can either band together, shut down the government till the Republicans let you come to the table, or you can grab it's like 8 people, to vote alongside the Republicans and pass this continuing resolution. And there's a lot of problems with this, is because this is not just a funding of the last CR. Like the funding levels are not the same, and it creates what's called a slush fund. And I know, Darren, what you do for work, so I know that you know what that means. But for the audience that doesn't know, so there's a term known as an earmark, where basically money has to go to certain places. Well, whenever you create a slush fund, it kind of just goes to the head, and the head of the agency or the head of or the office, they get to kind of just pick how the money is spent. So rather than saying, you got $40 million for salary and $40 million for office supplies and whatever, it's like you just have $80 million, spend it however you want, which is very different than how we usually do things. Now, Darren, have you read anything at all about like, why Schumer caved, or like why um, the Democrats decided not to shut down the government?
I have not. I've heard whispers that they might go ahead and try and shut it down, but I'm not sure why it never came about.
Gotcha. So Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader in the House, he was fully ready to hold his caucus together and say, we're just going to withdraw support and we're going to let the government shut down. And then Chuck Schumer says, at the last second, when the last candle goes out, he says, you know what? We're going to support this. And the reason he says is because, listen, in a government shutdown, the only thing that can be funded is what they quote unquote essential government, operations. Which they're like, listen, do we want to give Doge the ability to cut the VA or Medicare or Social Security? Because the executive branch in a shutdown is basically God. Like, they get to choose what to fund, they get to choose what's essential, what's not essential. And Schumer didn't want to give that power to Trump and Elon Musk, to be quite frank. And he's caught in a lot of backlash because, A, this is the only. First of all, what do you think the Tea Party would have done, Darren, in 2010? Right? What do you think they would have done? They'd have shut down the government, right?
Oh yeah, they're firebrands.
100%. Especially because at the time, it's the only leverage they had. And he's getting a lot of backlash because A, he didn't fight, and then B, there's a lot of really, really messed up shit in this bill. For one, there's a $4.5 trillion tax cut, right? It contributes $400 billion to the deficit upon what we already were projected, right? And that's under the best case scenario. That is the more likely scenario is that it's more like $500 billion, you know?
Yeah.
And they're expected to cut about $880 billion from the Energy and Commerce Committee, which includes Medicare and Medicaid. So this is a little complicated. So let me explain. So the Energy and Commerce Committee has Medicare and Medicaid, which in total is a $2 trillion budget, and Medicare and Medicaid are about 1 trillion of that. So it's about half the budget. So $880 billion is supposed to be cut from that. So essentially, there's no way to cut that agency without cutting Medicare and Social Security, right? I mean, this is just like a blatant like this 72 million Americans rely on that, you know? Like this is all nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Um here's the other thing. If they cut everything related to healthcare, they would still be $600 billion short, like from their goal. Like they have to cut Medicare and Social Security. Or sorry, not Medicare and Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid. Um that's the only way to do it. And I know you're not Democratic like partisan, but I just want to get like your take. Like, why do you think that like Schumer would cave? Do you agree with it? Like, just whatever your take is on any of that, by all means.
Well, now that you've presented me the facts, I mean, what if I were him, I feel like I would have fought. I probably would have shut down the government, even if it means Elon and Trump might get some time to run amok. Surely the damage wouldn't be as high as, I mean, the damage from this CR sounds worse. So, than whatever I could fathom that they could do. So,
Yeah, well, his argument is that basically, listen, if we shut down the government, A, we're gonna land into an instant recession, and then Trump and Doge specifically are just going to cut everything that they can, whether that's, more Medicare, more Medicaid, more Social Security, more departments like, either USAID or like the Department of Education or whatever. Like, he's like, dude, they're just going to use this like an axe. Like, they're going to destroy everything. And AOC's point was, if they're going to do that, then there's going to be political consequences for them. So we may as well, like if they're gonna, tie the rope around their neck, we may as well let him hang himself. Like this does, and people are calling on AOC to primary Chuck Schumer, and like I think that if she doesn't run for president in 2028, then she might actually run for Senate and primary this guy, and God can only hope. God can only hope that we get some new blood in the Democratic Party.
so I take it you agree with me then that it would have been more wise for Chuck Schumer to have
Yeah,
fought.
even if you take a Machiavellian approach to this, it would have been way better to block this bill. I mean, he basically voted for a cut to Medicaid and Medicare. Like, like what? Um,
Yeah. Uh,
it'll contribute if this continuing resolution goes on for 10 years, it'll contribute $4 trillion to the deficit.
whew, oh my
on
gosh.
on top of, and keep in mind this is best case scenario, that they have like three or four different models. This 4 trillion is the best case scenario.
Oh my gosh. Man, wow, that is rough. Yeah, I do you think maybe there is maybe a Machiavellian way in which maybe Chuck thinks that, perhaps if he lets this CR go through, that all this bad stuff will be pinned on Trump, and maybe it was kind of like a cynical 4D chess ploy.
Maybe, I mean, maybe I doubt it though. I mean, this guy doesn't have political calculus in my opinion. This was obvious to me. This was, he's one of the heaviest, like, so to be a majority leader or to be a minority leader in your party, you basically have to be the best fundraiser. And Chuck Schumer has some of the biggest fundraising abilities in the Democratic Party. So I have no doubt what this was. His donors came to him and said, "Hey, you're gonna oppose this shutdown because otherwise we're gonna be losing a lot of money." Whether that's the finance sector, whether that's the military industrial complex, whether that's pharma, whether that's guns, whether that's oil, it doesn't matter. I'm sure they all came to him and said, "We need government money." Like, I
That's
have,
a good point.
and I think that the base of the Democratic Party wanted to see some fight, and instead, this is like I said, for the next 18 months, this is the only leverage that the Democrats are going to have. It's their government until the midterms. So Chuck Schumer decided it was best to just roll over and basically give up, And I can't imagine any Republican Congress in my lifetime where they had this sort of leverage to just force the other side to concessions. And they're just like, you know what? Roll over. This is unbelievable to me.
Well, I totally get your anger. Yeah, that and I think you know what, you're probably right about Chuck's motivations. It probably was a donor thing. You know, and I bet his donors also fear a recession. I feel as though Democrats shouldn't be so afraid of a recession. I mean, one time in finance class in college, I asked our professor, I was like, you know, it was during COVID, I think, or, it's like, are we, uh, or it was in the COVID era, sometime around then. I was like, are we heading towards a recession? I was all worried because everyone was talking about it. And he said, well, maybe, but a recession, all that is just 2 quarters of negative economic growth. And when you say it like that, it's like, we're talking like low percentage points, and it's not good. People are going to lose jobs, but, chances are it's not going to be you that loses the job. So, you know, you might as well just take the recession. I mean, it's
Right.
not it's not as scary as people make it out to be. I mean, you'll
Yeah, and I
survive.
think
So,
I think there's a lot of Republicans that are fine, and I don't mean like congressmen, but I mean like Republican donors are probably somewhat fine with a bit of a recession because a lot of money can be made in a recession. Some of the biggest like wealth inequality gains are made during recessions because the poor can't afford to contribute to the stock market, but the rich they can double down and you know.
oh
But
yeah, yeah, it's great for the wealthy. So, and we've always recovered. So, I mean,
oh, for sure, for sure,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like,
Recessions are always temporary.
yeah. So it's, yeah. The Democrats, if I were them, I just wouldn't be I wouldn't be so scared of a recession. I mean, it's really not. I mean, it's a big deal. It's going to hurt people, but grand scheme of things, I mean, not that big a deal.
Well, I'm not super worried about a recession as much as I'm worried about like the fact that like the instability from this is just it. I just think it's absurd, you know. And not just that. I think that like cutting Medicare and Medicaid specifically is just it's just a horrible idea. Yeah, like I said, 72 million Americans rely on that. And that's just Medicaid. That's not even Medicare. That's just the number I could find for Medicaid, you know?
Oh yeah, it's incredibly concerning, and I imagine people will die because of it. Uh, so
Right.
hopefully, hope it all works out. Hopefully,
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem like it, but
Right.
yep. Well, wish the Democrats had a little more fight in them, but
They
what
need
can
new
you
blood.
do?
They need new blood. They're gonna get new blood. There's gonna be they have to. Either that or die as a party.